Just by sort of going into your sensation, can you evoke any of that idea of what was happening in your hip as you took a step forward? It was really interesting as we went for a walk after class yesterday, and it was interesting how quickly I could lose it again. And again, because I left you with something quite specific, not too global, but something more, a little bit more specific, it's easier probably for you to begin to maybe evoke some of it or to remember it. So that opening of your hip joint, or getting a little bit more clarity about where your hip is. Okay, have a walk. And as you're walking, do you remember in your sensation any of the feeling after the first lesson, which was a little bit more of how this middle of you, this counter rotation through the middle of you, could lighten your arms and your legs. So sort of how do you pick something that people have still got their experience, but there's sometimes maybe something that you can just return to that can key them back in. And come to your mat. And lie on your back. Bend your knees. And very gently, just begin to tilt your pelvis a little between 12 and 6. And just feel how that's going through you at the moment. How easy is it to feel that your chin goes up and down? The changing curves in your spine. And how clear are your hips in your image? How easy is it when you tilt your pelvis down that you can really feel your pelvis really rolling over your hip joints? And your tailbone going down toward the floor so that your lower back is arching. And as your lower back arches up, your neck does exactly the same sort of range of movement to lengthen and go down. And what do your shoulders do? Are your shoulders involved in this at all, or are they just staying fairly, what's the word? Not engaged. So if your shoulders were going to be engaged as you did this up and down, what would they do? Maybe exaggerate them a little bit. What your shoulders might do in response to this movement. And really feel that difference when you're rolling, taking your weight down, rolling down over your pelvis or when you're rolling up over your pelvis. So now, same thing, but roll a little bit down more over toward your left hip. And how does that go through you? So now it's a little bit more asymmetrical. You're taking your weight down as if you're taking it, you could say, to, I'm not sure how you've done your 12 or 6, so you're taking it to either 3 or 9, but really thinking about your pelvis rolling over the top of your hip joint. And what do your shoulders do now? This is a more asymmetrical movement. What does your sternum do? What do your ribs do? Can you feel everything starts, the two sides start to do something different? How this pulls through you. So going to your left, going to your left. So just feeling that as soon as your pelvis begins to change its trajectory, everything changes. What happens in the 2 feet changes, what happens in your 2 knees changes, in your hips, in your shoulders, in your elbows, in your hands, in your head, in your ribs. And then go a few times to your right. And of course, there's many ways this can pull through you because you've got so many joints, so many options in the middle of you. But just to feel that as soon as your pelvis goes off to the side, your shoulders have to do something different, your hips have to do something different, your arms, your legs, that they wouldn't be doing exactly the same thing. And then go back to the middle again and just see if that's informed by just doing those movements to the side, has informed at all what you do forward back. And really feeling these changing curves, this up-down movement. Well, it's not really it is up-down, but it's more, the curves are more the forward back, if you like, relative to the floor, because your head and your pelvis are basically staying the same distance apart. So it's the amplitude of your curves that's changing. And you can really begin to find this relationship through your chest that allows your neck and your lower back both to become able to change their curves. As one goes up, one goes down. Great. Okay. Bring your left leg to your chest again, or somewhere comfortable. Feel where the weight is on your pelvis when you've got your left leg, you've got your interlaced hands behind it. And very gently begin taking your leg out to the left. And again, remember your hip is pushing away, your hip is pushing away, not so much your knee, but think of it coming from your hip. Your knee is straightening, your ankle is flexing. And can you remember what we did yesterday? What happened in your chin? And this funny movement where your chin will be going up, but your shoulders are going forward. So your shoulders are going forward. So even though you're extending your head, it's being pulled forward in space or forward to the left. So your head's staying low. You're just thinking gradually of taking your left leg further and further out to the left. Your arms stay really soft. Okay, so remember what that's like at the moment and come up to sitting. And let's, in another orientation, explore this movement and see what this position has to offer us. Okay, so right leg is standing, in a standing position, and you can adapt where you want the leg to be, whether it's sort of midline or out to the right as the lesson goes on. Just what makes sense for you as the lesson goes on. So could you again interlace both hands and put them behind your left knee? Left knee. The other knee. Have it bent. Somewhere where your elbow, your arms are softly bent. So you're not already at your end range with your arms. So they're just soft. And just feel, is there anything I can do there to soften my arms a little bit more? Is there any work I can give up to soften them a little bit more? And then gently begin to slide your heel away along the floor. But again, you're leading it from your hip. You're leading it from your hip. Your foot is flexing. Your knee is straightening. And your arms are soft. And they're responding to this movement of straightening your leg. And can you begin to get a sense as you do this? This is such a beautiful movement for people who love stretching their hamstrings. Because what we're looking for here is that at no point is it only your leg doing the movement. No? At every moment in time, all of you is involved. All of you is involved at every moment in time. And really notice the trajectory of your head. Where does your head go in space? How's it? So is there something about the relationship of your head and your knee that allows your leg to straighten without you having to do anything? With no effort at all. And you might even, you might not, but can you remember a series we did sort of in this position? And there was something about it, and Feldenkrais at that point had your head on your knee, your nose on your knee. So is there something about this relationship of your head and your knee? What happens if your head stops moving at any point as you're going to straighten your leg? If it just stops following that trajectory, where do you have to do more work? And can you begin to feel that as you allow your head to keep following your leg forward, that your arms can stay soft? And then, is there a difference? So your head's going forward. If you're feeling any tightness anywhere, a little bit in your back, what happens if you allow your chin to go forward? So your head's still moving forward in space, but you think of your chin going forward to the wall in front of you. Does that maybe allow some other parts of your back to soften or to get involved in the movement, compared to if your chin goes down? So your back gets longer, your head moves forward, but your head can do different movements as it's going forward. Keep your right leg standing if you can. It's going to do something about the weight shift. Have a rest. So again, there's a principle in this lesson about what happens when all of us is clear about the direction we're going in. So this lesson's not so much about counterbalance. Okay, come up to sitting again. So what do you think you'd do, just so we can clarify this, what would you do if you were going to counterbalance as you did that? As you straightened your knee, you were going to counterbalance. You'd lean back, your pelvis might go backwards. Yeah? As your leg went forward. Yeah? You can still straighten your knee, but can you feel that's a really different movement? Rather than you being pulled forward. So that's a real classic for lots of people to do as soon as they come up to sitting. That they will roll backwards to straighten their leg. Okay. So, could you now imagine that there's a clock on the floor? So as your left foot's standing, yeah. So it's out in front of you, I mean, on the floor, but it's flexed. Huh? So if I look at you, so this is 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, so this is your clock. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, which way do you want your 3 and your 9? 3, 9. Yeah? So it's just a little clock on the floor. So as you begin to slide your heel forward this time, as you take your heel toward 7 o'clock, could you take your toes toward 1 o'clock? Does that make sense? No? So as you take your heel toward 7 o'clock, your toes are going to go to 1 o'clock. So can you feel now you're asking something different to happen in your hip? Maybe even in your weight shift. Maybe something happens differently in your weight shift. Where does your head go? And then could you take your heel to 8 o'clock and your toes to 2 o'clock? And what does that do? How do you organise to do that? And feel, does your leg to do that, does your leg still go in an absolutely straight trajectory forward because you've got an idea that's where it's going? Or if you felt your way through it, would your legs start to go off somewhere else a little bit? And then how about your heel to 5 o'clock and your toes to 11 o'clock? Just to really feel how these slight differences in orientation organise your pelvis differently, your torso, your head, and especially your arms. So can you begin to feel that these different orientations, maybe ask one arm to get longer than the other? And just really feel as long as you can keep moving forward, your arms will be able to stay soft. So just keep exploring those hours of the clock until you can get maybe to 9 and 3 as well. Okay, so now is it possible to do exactly the same thing, but this time with your foot in the air, just a little bit in the air. So you haven't got the floor to support it. And again, you're exploring these different hours of the clock where your heel goes in one direction, your toes go in the other direction. And you're really feeling your arms soft, soft, soft. Your chest soft. And to really feel the more you can let yourself come forward, for most of us, the more our arms can give up the work. That the chest, your chest can soften more. And getting clearer and clearer about it. Your hip extending, it's your hip pushing away. But again, there's never any sense that your leg straightens without everything being there in your image. And have a rest on your back again. Feel the difference. Which side do you like more? Which side would you like more of? It's a really aesthetic question. Just settle there. Really give yourself a minute or so to really feel. Do changes keep happening as you lie there? Does something else just start to settle or to give a little bit more? Come back to sitting again. Again with your right leg standing. Hands behind. You might want to interlace them the other way, behind your left knee. And again, just take a moment to feel those two ways of interlacing. Again, we've done this before too. How does that influence what happens in your shoulders? And again, it's really easy to just change them and to keep everything sort of fixed. So really feel that interlacing the fingers, we've done this before, could be something that changes every part of you. So that it's not simply your fingers you're changing, but something's maybe going to happen in your elbows, your shoulders, your shoulder blades, your ribs, your head, your chest, that allows that to be easy. Because remember we said last time that it's only unfamiliar because it's not all of you involved in the movement when you do the non-habitual, and that the habitual is because you've learned a whole pattern of movement. It's not just your hands, but you've learned a whole organisation that's made your fingers feel habitual that way. So it's going to have to be a whole organisation that's going to allow the non-habitual to feel easy. Okay, so now begin to slide your left off the floor, your foot, and begin to take it more to the left. More and more over to the left as you straighten it. And really feel, do you lead with your heel in or out? So as you begin to swing your leg more and more out to the left, What happens if your heel turns out to the left and your toes turn in? And what happens if your heel goes in and your toes go out a little bit? Does that influence the weight shift? Does it influence where your head goes? And just find a comfortable position for your legs, somewhere out to the left. So it's pointing toward the wall, somewhere heading in that direction that you're orienting with your soul, more toward the wall on the left than the wall in front. Okay, so once you've got it out there somewhere to the left, could you begin to roll over your left heel? So your left heel's on the floor somewhere, and you're beginning to roll over it, just your heel. So you're rolling your foot in and your foot out, and you're just feeling, how does that go through you? Where does your head go? So does your head go in the same direction as your heel or the same direction as your toes? And whatever you're doing, could you do the opposite? So if your head's been going in the same direction as your toes, could it go in the same direction as your heel? And feel, what does that ask through the middle of you? And then could you find a way that wherever your heel goes, that's where your head goes? And can you begin to feel this asking some side bending in your neck? And that maybe one elbow gets longer and one elbow gets shorter. But that's going to really maybe have something to do with the ability to side bend in your neck. Not turning in your neck, not flexing in your neck, but side bending in your neck. So the side bending in your neck is going to allow your shoulders maybe to go a little bit more up and down. And can the side bending in your neck have something to do with the curve in your torso? So that the side bending of your neck is following the curve in your torso. And what's that going to have to ask you to do in your weight shift? If the side bending in your neck is going to go through your torso. And you feel one elbow begins to bend. And leave it, have a rest again. They're just such clever movements to enable us to find some really non-habitual ways of moving our torso in weight shift. Non-habitual ways of where our head can go. And again, as we've discovered a lot in previous ATM segments, the more I can allow my head to let go, the more I can allow it to be free. Again, for many of us, our head gets tight as soon as we think. Our head gets tight as soon as we think. So how do we think? How do we get a habit that we can think without tightening up in our neck and head? Okay, up to sitting again. Same position, right leg standing, hands behind your left knee. And now, so don't think, don't try and work it out, sense your way through. So now you're going to, again, take your leg out to the left. And as you do it, you're going to find a way that your right arm gets longer and your left elbow can begin to bend and reach toward the floor. So your left leg is going out to the left and you're finding a way. Your right arm gets longer and your left elbow just begins to bend, and you can feel it has to reach away from you with the bending. So the elbow, feel the difference if you can play with it, if the elbow comes in by your side to bend or if the elbow can reach away to bend. Which one's going to take you further to the left? Where does your head have to go to do this? Where does your weight have to shift to take your left elbow toward the floor? So it's a puzzle, and you're given some of the orientations, the clues, and you're always feeling that your leg lengthening, every part of you is following. It's never just your leg straightening. So again, we're asking you to understand many planes of movement in this because you're going forward, so you're rounding. You've got to have a little bit of side bending in there to allow your neck side bending, to allow the side bending in your ribs and your torso. And again, also feeling, what about your chin? Is there something about if I can let my chin just go forward in space a little, go forward in space, that just allows for many of us something different to happen in our upper back and our shoulders, rather than our chin going down. That maybe just allows something to soften through your shoulder blades, through your upper ribs, and that this very clear idea that my chin going forward doesn't mean my head is pulling backwards in space. So I've still got this forward and to the left momentum going on. And again, the more your leg can swing out to the left, the more your leg can swing, keep sliding out to the left as you do it. Is there a way that, again, you could begin to head toward this rolling to your side? It's just a direction, doesn't mean you have to get there. So that everything knows where you're going. There's a clarity in your intention. So that you come again into that hurdling position. And it will be, sorry, I should say it will be easier if your foot's not on the floor. Much easier. Because your foot on the floor is already saying to your brain, I'm taking weight. Yeah, I'm taking weight on this foot. To really feel. Your left foot is not on the floor. Your right foot stays on the floor, or some part of your right foot stays on the floor all the time. No, because it still should be moving in the same direction. But you want to counterbalance, yeah, so you can see that as you go down, yeah, and you want to put your leg, that's counterbalance, because that's what you do as a dancer all the time. So how could you think, go on, like you go, this could go that way, to let your weight really roll onto that left hip, yeah? So what's this crazy movement? You've actually done this movement before in different orientations, and you can see that what he says has great meaning about it's not yours till you know it in every orientation. Now, you don't really get it until you know it in every orientation. Because again, it's this ability to come onto a weight-bearing leg and be soft, not to have to work to stand up, but to bring your weight onto a weight-bearing leg and find softness, that your skeleton's there to support you. So it's so much about your weight shift. And really letting your legs swing out to the left. And never letting it sort of get stuck. So at any moment it can change its rotation. So your heel's ready to roll at any moment. So that you're going to sort of come up on, you're going to go down on your left elbow. And your head's going to swing in a big arc. It's a little bit like perfecting the self-image in a way. Do you remember lesson 8 in the ATM book? Yeah, it's a little bit like that. It's the same basic idea that every part of you has to keep moving in a very clear orientation. So as soon as one part of you stops being part of your image, you'll probably get stuck. That's why it's called perfecting the self-image. What do you leave out of your image? Is it your foot? Your other hip? Okay, lying on your back, knees bent, hands behind your left knee. And let's get back to what the lesson was about, which was gently, gently leg away from you. Knees straighten, foot flex. And how does that pull through your upper torso? Is there any more of you that feels available? And I'll just show Nicole this because she wasn't here yesterday. So Nicole, as you begin to do it, can you think that it's a little bit more from your hip? Can you feel that difference? That it's your hip? Yeah? And maybe there's some trajectory there, yeah? Your chin goes back, yeah? So this idea, it's a very clever way of doing it on the floor because your chin can never drop back behind you in a way. Or your head can't because the floor's going to stop it. So just find a trajectory where you think you could roll up to sitting. It might be straight ahead, it might be a bit to the side. But anywhere where you could feel this extending leg could bring you up to sitting. Yay! And just really get that image of when it's easy. If you pause there for a moment, you'll feel, yeah, all of me is there. All of me is there. Is perfecting the self-image is just so fundamental to what we're giving people a chance to experience. Okay, come up to standing. See what that's done. And just see which side feels softer. And what parts of you feel maybe as if they've given up some work. Are there some ribs that feel as if they've just given up a bit of work? And that they're more available for your breath. Because again, remember, the only reason the ribs wouldn't move if you were breathing is if the muscles were being used to hold you up. If you were using your ribs to hold you up. So is there a difference between something in your neck after that? The two sides of your neck, one eye compared to the other? One foot compared to the other? Have a walk. Really feel how one foot comes to the floor, what your hips are doing. Do you feel your skeleton's got a little bit more maybe shock absorption on one side than the other, a little bit more ability to take a vertical force and respond to it? how would it be to turn around your right leg and your left leg? Would your head do something different when you turned around your right or your left at the moment? Can you feel after this very one-sided lesson that this isn't so much about finding this horizon, yeah, that your head's really more into giving up the horizon a little bit more? Or your eyes have given up the horizon might be a better way of putting it. Okay, let's have a break.